man. He must eat before he can think. Kind words are only empty air, and not his meat and drink. Then left, right, left, then left, right, left. There's a place, comrade, for you. Not with us in the Workers' United Front, for you are a worker too.
Okay. This is the Communist Manifesto, a visual novel. I have read the Communist Manifesto. So, a specter is haunting Europe. I have to read this out loud, don't I? The specter of communism. All the powers of old Europe have ended. I'm sorry. I don't want. I gotta actually. Okay, I'll put it low, but geez, I need to actually read it. All the powers of old Europe have entered into a holy alliance to exercise the specter, Pope and Tsar, Metternich and Guizot. I don't know that term, Guizot. It's a person. I know who Metternich is. French radicals and German police spies. Is this how the manifesto starts? I don't remember this part. I remember Workers of the World Unite. Anyway, I was looking for waifu games where the party in opposition has not been decried as communistic by its opponents in power. So I was looking for waifu games, as you do on Steam, going down, and was like, okay, NSFW, hentai, NSFW, can't recording of that. Free to play, I saw the Communist Manifesto, and I guess, you know what? You know what's a waifu? You know what's the ultimate waifu? Communism, I guess. We're the opposition that has not hurled back the branding reproach of communism against the more advanced opposition parties, as well against its reactionary adversaries. When was this written? Like 1860? Is this before Germany even formed as Germany? I don't think it's that. Maybe it is. 1860, 1817. Two things result from this fact. One, communism is already acknowledged by all European powers to be itself a power. Not really. Two, it is high time that communists should openly, in the face of the whole world, publish their views, their aims, their tendencies, and meet this nursery tale of the specter of communism with a manifesto of the party itself. To this end, communists of various nationalities have assembled in London and sketched the following manifesto to be published. Oh, this is the preface. This is not even the actual manifesto itself. It's English, French, German, Italian, Flemish, and Danish. Flemish and Danish? Come on now. Do you really care about Belgian communists, Danish communists? Do you really? Tell me about history. Is this the actual... What? This is just like a history lesson. This is not the actual Communist Manifesto. This is some bullshit. I want to hear the communists, proletarians, and communists. What? This is not the actual Communist Manifesto. You could say it's about communism, that's fine, but it's not the Communist Manifesto itself. In what relation do communists stand to the proletarians as a whole? The communists do not form a separate party opposed to the other working class parties. They have no interests separate and apart from those of the proletariat as a whole. They do not set up sectarian principles of their own by which to shape and mold the proletarian movement. The communists are distinguished from other working class parties by this only. In the national struggles of the proletarians of the different countries, they point out and bring to the front the common interests of the entire proletariat, independently of all nationality. In the various stages of development which the struggle of the working class against bourgeoisie is passed through, they always have everywhere present the interests of the movement as a whole. Communists, therefore, on the one hand, practically the most advanced and resolute section of the worst parties of every country. That section pushes towards all others. On the other hand, theoretically, they have over the great mass of military and advantage of clear understanding of line of march conditions. And the ultimate general result of the military movement for the proletariat class overthrow the bourgeois policy. Okay, so having read some Marx myself in a philosophy class or sociology class or something like that, it wasn't just out of curiosity. So Marx wrote in German, and he was notoriously shit at writing, and he was notoriously shit at expressing his ideas, which is why this is partly written by Engels. And Friedrich Engels is like the reason why anyone knows Marx, because all of his writing is just fucking horrible. He said that Marx needed to be translated multiple times, one from his German to actual German, and then the German to whatever language. So there's like layers upon layers of translation. The theoretical conclusions of the communists are in no way based on ideas or principles that have been invented or discovered by this universal reformer. How long is this one? They merely express in general terms actual relations spring from a class struggle, from a historical movement going under our very eyes. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was literally just expecting going through the Communist Manifesto. Like, there's an actual pamphlet that's like 3 pages long. It's probably like 12 paragraphs. It's not a long read. And you just go through it, and then maybe have some pictures in the background of Marx and like attempt at revolutions throughout history, and that's it. The abolition of existing property relations is not at all a distinctive feature of communism. I guess anarchy has that too. What about my family? Abolition of bourgeois family. Abolition of the family, even the most radical flare up at this infamous proposal of the communists. On what foundation is the present family, the bourgeois family, based? On capital, on private gain. In its completely developed form, this family exists only among the bourgeoisie. But this state of things finds its complement in the practical absence of the family among the proletarians and in public prostitution. The bourgeois family will vanish as a matter of course when its complement vanishes, and both will vanish with the vanishing of capital. What replaces it? Do you charge us with wanting to stop the exploitation of children by their parents? To this crime we plead guilty. At this time, like, there were tons and tons of children in factories, and child labor was just a normal thing. The people in farms literally just have 20 children just as labor units for their farm. But you say we destroy the most hallowed of relations when we replace home education by social. Okay, but are we expecting like communal nurseries, communal family units that basically indoctrinate people? And your education, exclamation point. Is not that also social? Yes, and determined by the social conditions under which you educate by intervention, direct or indirect, of society, which is yes. The communists, well, we're talking about the family, not about schools themselves. The communists have not invented the intervention of society in education. They do, but seek to alter the character of that intervention and to rescue education from the influence of the ruling class. Yet restructuring education is not the same as destroying the family. The bourgeois claptrap about the family and education, about the hallowed co-relation of parents and child, becomes all the more disgusting the more by the action of modern industry in the 1860s. All the family ties among the proletarians are torn asunder. Actually, I want to look up when the Communist Manifesto was written right now. 1848. Earlier than I expected. Okay. Yeah, I was thinking of the 1860s. So, Germany didn't even exist as a nation state. Italy was not close either. The bourgeois sees his wife as mere, I skipped the line, but whatever, mere instrument of production. He hears that the instruments of production are to be exploited in common and naturally can come to another conclusion other than the lot of being common to all will likewise fall to the women. He has not even a suspicion that the real point aimed is to do away with the status of women as mere instruments of production. For the rest, nothing is more ridiculous than the virtuous indignation of our bourgeois and the community of women, which they pretend is to be openly and officially established by the communists. The communists have no need to introduce community of women. It has existed almost from time immemorial. This is like 50, 60 years before any woman had any sort of voting rights in any country, and women in the workplace is basically normalized post World War II, and that's only because of total war. So, post 1945, this is almost 100 years before that even. Our bourgeois, not content with having wives and daughters of their proletarians at their disposal, not to speak of common prostitutes, take the greatest pleasure in seducing each other's wives. Bourgeois marriage is in reality a system of wives in common, and thus at the most what the communists might possibly be reproached with is the desire to introduce the substitution for a hypocritically concealed and openly legalized community of women. This is a very Marx way of saying they're raping your women. Bourgeois society, capitalist society is a system of communal rape for your women. For the rest, it is self-evident that the abolition of the present system of production, which must bring it with the abolition of the community of women, bringing up from that system of prostitution, both public and private. What about my country? I guess that's an important part of the international communist movement, because one of the central aspects of Marxism, not just communism in general, but Marxism specifically, is the abolition of nation-state. The communists are further approached by desiring to abolish countries and nationality. Not all communists, but definitely Marxist. The working men have no country. We cannot take from them what they have not got. Since the proletariat must first all acquire political supremacy, must rise to be the leading class of the nation, this is pre-class of society, must constitute itself the nation, it is so far itself national, though not in the bourgeois sense of the world. National differences and antagonism between the people are daily and more vanishing, owing the development of the bourgeoisie to freedom, to commerce, to the world market, to uniformity in the mode of production and the conditions of life corresponding thereto. There's a lot of times where I won't just, I wouldn't accept random text of speech, but I guess in this situation you gotta do something, because it's just a bunch of speech and there's no pictures other than some dude. This is like is this from Planet of the Apes type picture? Because that's what someone would guess. The supremacy of the proletariat. Oh, you can click on these? Do you define them here, inside? I guess. Oh my god. Class. Proletariat is the working class, the people that don't own capital, and the bourgeoisie is the capitalist class in the most generic sense. I mean, it's basically just the have versus have not sort of binary situation. in a capitalist mind. In most situations, you can reduce it to that, but it's obviously not that simple, since it's the entire range of people economically. You can't just draw a line and say everyone is on this side and everyone's on that side. In proportion as to the exploitation of one individual by another will always also be put to an end. Right. But in almost, if not every single case that we've seen anything resembling an attempt to achieve communism, is just exploitation by the state instead of exploitation by an individual. Also be put to an exploitation of one nation by another will also be put to an end. I guess my statement also argues that true communism or true Marxism has never been tried, which is, I guess, true. In proportion to the antagonism to be classed within the nation vanishes the hostility of one nation to another. That is the stupidest statement I've ever heard. In proportion as the antagonism between classes within the nation vanishes, the hostility of one nation to another will come to an end. So if you have a classist society and you don't antagonize one class against another class within one nation, you will have the concept of nationalism end, and therefore competitions between. That is nonsense. No. That is, you can't say, okay, once we end the concept of class, tribalism ends. No. Okay? Abso-fucking-lutely not. The charges against communism are made from religious, philosophical, and generally from an ideological standpoint, are not deserving of serious examination. It's basically just saying, yeah, you're dumb. Does it require deep intuition to comprehend that man's ideas, views, and conception, in one word, man's consciousness, changes with every change in the conditions of his material existence, in his social relations and his social life? I mean, you're just saying that what we are as a person is dependent on the society we live in, the country we live in, the laws we live in, the material existence of having houses, having phones, having internet, blah blah blah, as opposed to being in a straw hut, gathering berries or chilling out on your farm, focusing on getting some grain so you don't starve during the winter. Obviously, okay, that is true, but Marx continues, what else does the history of ideas prove than that intellectual production changes its character in proportion as material production that changes the ruling ideas of each class has ever been there. But when people speak of the ideas that revolutionize society, they do but express the fact they are within the old society, the elements of a new one have been created. And the dissolution of old ideas keep you in pace with the dissolution of old existence. And the ancient world was in its last source, ancient religions were over. When Christians' ideas come to the 18th century's true rationalist ideas, feudal society fought its death battle with the then revolutionary bourgeoisie. The ideas of religious liberty and freedom, consciousness merely gave expression to the sway of free competition within the domain of knowledge. Undoubtedly, it would be said religious, moral, philosophical, and juridical. I don't think I've ever heard the term juridical. I know what it means. You're talking about judicial. Would it be better judicial ideas, juridical ideas? Anyway, have been modified in the course of historical development, but religion, morality, philosophy, political science, and law constantly survive this change. There are, besides eternal truths, such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society. Maybe eternal concepts, not necessarily truths. But communism abolishes its eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis. It therefore acts as a contradiction to all past historical experience. I mean, all you're saying is that without classes, none of the old truths hold still, and we have no fucking idea what's going to happen. That's pretty much what you're saying here, Marx. What does this accusation reduce itself to? The history of all past society has consisted in the development of class antagonism. Yes. You're just saying, like, king and servant, king and subject, lord and serf, and then capitalist and proletariat, right? The history of all past society is consistent in the development of class antagonisms that assume different forms at different epochs. But whatever form they have taken, one fact is common to all past ages: the exploitation of one part of society by the other. No wonder then that social consciousness of past ages, despite all the multiplicity and variety that it displays, moves within certain common forms or general ideas, which cannot completely vanish except with the total disappearance of class antagonisms. Like, there's the thing with Marx, is that he doesn't really describe what should be there. It just describes destroying the current state, and then that's it. Destroy it, and then skip a few, profit. And it never goes from revolution to have a steps, because it's like Lenin's like, oh shit, what the fuck do we do? Stalin's like, can I just kill some of my people? Pol Pot's like, yeah, that's a great idea. Mao's like, oh yeah, I guess that's a great idea. Let's do that. And then that's the only thing they get to. They get to the Machiavellian, we need power. And then they never get off, we need power. We need power to do something, but they never understand what they're supposed to be doing, because no one has explained what a classist society is supposed to look like, because no one's done it. And it just falls back on the same feudal, capitalist, totalitarian exploitation system. What measures are required for communism? Let's discuss something else. Types of socialism? What options do you have? Types: feudal, German or true socialisms, conservatives, critical utopian socialism, and communism. What would he consider his own? In every great modern revolution has always given voice to demands of the proletariat, such as the writings of Babeuf. Never heard of that one. The first direct attempts of the proletariat and attain his own ends made in times of universal excitement, when feudal societies was being overthrown, necessarily failed, owing to them then underdeveloped state of the proletariat. You mean as like a class consciousness sort of development, not as like people being poor. As well as to the absence of the economic conditions for its emancipation, conditions that had yet to be produced, and could be produced by the impending bourgeois epoch alone. The revolutionary literature that accompanied these first movements of the proletariat never set necessarily a reactionary character. It inculcated universal asceticism and social leveling in its crudest form. Inculcated? I don't know what that... I can understand what the context is. I don't think I've ever heard that term. Socialist communist systems, properly so called, those of blah 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 people, spring into existence of the early undeveloped period described above of the struggle between proletariat and bourgeoisie. See section 1, bourgeois and proletarians, fantasy systems into the class antagonisms, as well as action and the decomposing elements. Okay. But the proletariat in its infancy offers to them the spectacle of a class without any historical initiative or any independent political movement. This is about utopian socialism. What about this is about utopian socialism? They search for new social science after new social laws. Historical action yield personal inventive action. Historically created conditions of emancipation to fantastic ones. Class organization of the proletariat to an organization of society, especially contrived by these inventors. Future history resolves itself in their eyes into the propaganda and practical carrying out of their social plans. Conscious of caring chiefly for the interests of the working class as being the most suffering class. Only from the point of view of being the most suffering class does the proletariat exist for them. Utopian socialists want to improve the condition of every member of society. If you're going to have a class of society, you have to improve the condition of every single person. Habitually appeal to society at large without the distinction of class, nay, the preference to the ruling class. Oh, he's going to accuse it to being a reformist, but inherently submitting to the current authority. That's what he's going to be saying. For how can people, once they understand their system, fail to see it in the best possible plan in the state of society? You mean, how can people be greedy and selfish? Well, because people are greedy and selfish. Hence, they reject. Oh, he's saying utopian as in, like, once you just tell people the right thing, they will. Once you just tell them, have you heard the good word of our Lord? And then they're like, oh, bam, I've never heard of that. I'm totally a Christian now. It would be the same thing. It would be like socialism as a religion sort of thing. It's like, oh, self-evidence, yeah. You want good for everyone. Oh, well, I guess I'll do what you say because good for everyone. Greater good. It's like the fucking end of Hot Fuzz. For the greater good. Such fantastic, yeah. So he's gonna he's criticizing utopian socialism. Socialist and communist publications contain also a critical element. They attack every principle of existing society, and so they are full of the most valuable materials for the Enlightenment. Practical measures proposed in them: abolition of distinction of town and country, of family, of the caring. Like just how places are structured, just how terrain is structured, you need a certain level of distinction between urban and rural and agricultural states and non-agricultural states, and there's like a gulf in the sort of mentalities that, you live in a Hong Kong where it's like a bajillion people in a tiny little space, or you live in like the middle of Wyoming or something like that, where there's like 5 people per the entire state. Like Wyoming is like, I don't know, 5% of the size of Alaska and has slightly less people than Alaska. Propagation of social harmony, the conversion of the function of the state into a mere superintendence of production. Of all these proposals point solely. So these proposals are a purely utopian character. What is the definition? Thomas More, Fictional Island, Atheistic Communist Republic, describing this novel utopia, denoted a vision of perfect society which plays the role of an ideal social connotation of utopia as utopian socialism is the ideal state of society representing as no real basis in actuality. Right, so when they use utopia, they're using it as a term that's like delusional. Utopian characters, like this is like a utopia, but it's literally not achievable because we have limited resources, because humans behave a certain way, etc., etc. The significance of critical utopian socialism and communism bears inverse relation to historical development. The proportion as the modern class struggle develops and takes definite shape, and this fantastic standing apart from the contest, these fantastic attacks on it lose all practical value and all theoretical justification. They're just disciples have in every case form mere reactionary sects. They hold fast to their original views of their masters in opposition to the progressive historical development of the proletariat. I think he's trying to say here is that because they're utopian in nature, they don't actually respond to the realities of the situation. And the realities of the situation from a communist, from a socialist point of view, is basically just get to where you are to revolution. That's it. So there's nothing after revolution, which is the problem. Like I said. Anyway, this 30 minutes of me reading of the Communist Manifesto. It's not even the real Communist Manifesto. Like, you have all this and you don't actually have the actual Communist Manifesto. It's like segments. Like, I understand what they're doing, but you really should have just the Communist Manifesto. Okay, so that's the whole thing. I thought it would be like 10 minutes of just reading the Communist Manifesto, not just tons and tons of like segment dumps, having a topic and then finding a thing, probably in some random thing he wrote, or Capital. Capital is like 3 different volumes, and it's like a bajillion pages, and no one's gonna read it. So. But can I get out of this? Music select. I'm sure all of this is gonna get copyright claimed once I upload this. Alright, so that's the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, even though this is definitely not just the Communist Manifesto. In fact, I'm not going, maybe I'll put like the entire text of the Communist Manifesto at the end here just to show how short it is while I talk about this. Anyway, I can do that off screen, obviously. Thanks for watching. Maybe I'll go back to searching for waifu games.